If you never say no, he will never chase you because you already belong to him in his mind. There is one boundary so subtle yet so powerful that it flips the entire dynamic, and once you set it, men don't pull away, they pursue harder. If this is resonating and you want more psychology-based attraction advice that actually protects your heart, not drains it, make sure you follow and stay with me, because the next part is where most people undo this boundary without realizing it. The most attractive boundary is emotional self-respect, not distance or coldness, because attraction is not created by disappearing or acting unavailable. It is created by how you treat yourself when connection is available. Emotional self-respect means you remain open, warm, and expressive, but you do not betray your inner standards to keep someone interested. You do not shrink your needs, rush intimacy, or tolerate inconsistency just to avoid loss. This boundary is felt, not announced, and it shows in small moments like how you respond to mixed signals, how you handle disappointment, and how quickly you give access to your time, energy, and emotions. When someone lacks emotional self-respect, they often overcompensate. They explain too much. They chase reassurance. They try to earn consistency by being extra patient, extra understanding, or extra forgiving. This sends an unspoken message that their presence can be taken for granted. Emotional self-respect does the opposite. It communicates that connection with you is valuable because it is intentional. You do not rush to fill silence. You do not bend your schedule to prove flexibility. You allow people to meet you where you are without forcing alignment. Distance and coldness are often confused with strength, but they are usually fear in disguise. They attempt to trigger pursuit by creating anxiety. Emotional self-respect triggers pursuit by creating admiration. A man does not feel manipulated. He feels intrigued because he senses depth, clarity, and inner stability. He feels that being with you requires emotional maturity, and that standard awakens his desire to rise rather than coast. This boundary also protects you because it keeps you from self-abandonment. You listen to your emotional cues instead of overriding them for potential. You pause when effort drops instead of chasing explanations. You remain kind, but you stop investing when the dynamic becomes one-sided. This shift changes everything because attraction thrives where there is balance, not sacrifice. Men chase not because you are hard to get, but because you are hard to replace. Emotional self-respect makes you irreplaceable because it shapes how others experience you, calm, confident, selective, and secure, without ever needing to withdraw affection or play games. Men chase what feels earned, not what feels freely available, because human desire is deeply connected to effort and investment. When something is given without discernment, the brain does not register it as valuable. It registers it as guaranteed. Earning creates emotional ownership, and ownership creates attachment. This does not mean playing games or withholding affection. It means allowing effort to precede reward. When a man shows up, consistently listens, takes initiative, and invests time, he feels a sense of progression, and that progression activates pursuit. When everything is instantly accessible, your attention, your time, your emotional availability, your forgiveness, there is no emotional friction. Friction is what creates momentum. Without it, the connection feels flat, even if chemistry exists. A man may enjoy the comfort, but he will not feel compelled to move forward because nothing inside him feels challenged or engaged. Earning builds curiosity because each step forward feels like an achievement rather than a given. This is why men often pull away when someone gives too much too fast. It overwhelms their nervous system and removes the opportunity for them to invest. Investment is not just physical or financial, it is emotional presence, planning, consistency, and accountability. When he invests, he subconsciously asks himself, why am I doing this? And the answer becomes, because she is worth it. That belief cannot form if the reward arrives before the effort. Earning also creates respect. Respect is not demanded, it is generated through boundaries. When you allow someone to meet you at a pace that reflects mutual effort, you communicate self-value without saying a word. You are not testing him, you are giving him space to choose you freely. That choice is powerful because it turns attraction into intention. Freely available energy often comes from fear of loss, and that fear leaks through behavior. It shows up as overgiving, over-explaining, and over-tolerating. Earning energy comes from abundance and self-trust. It shows up as calm responsiveness instead of instant access. This balance keeps desire alive because it allows tension, curiosity, and forward motion to exist at the same time. Men chase what they feel they have worked toward because effort bonds them emotionally. The chase is not about you running away. It is about him stepping forward into something that feels meaningful, earned, and worth protecting. Consistency in your standards creates desire, while inconsistency quietly erodes attraction because the human mind is wired to seek stability and clarity. When your standards shift based on fear, mood, or how much attention someone is giving you, it creates emotional noise. A man may feel momentary excitement, but he does not feel grounded or drawn forward. Desire grows when he understands the rules of engagement, not because they are spoken, but because they are lived. When you are consistent, you respond to the same behavior the same way every time. Respect is met with warmth, effort is met with availability, and inconsistency is met with a pause. Not anger, not punishment, just a clear change in energy. This predictability builds trust, and trust allows attraction to deepen because he knows where he stands. Emotional safety is seductive because it removes confusion and replaces it with confidence. Inconsistency, on the other hand, sends mixed signals. You might say you value communication but tolerate silence. You might claim you need effort but reward bare minimum. When your actions contradict your words, the dynamic becomes unstable. A man may chase temporarily to regain validation, but over time he loses respect because nothing he does seems to have real consequence. Desire cannot grow in a space where standards feel negotiable. Consistency also communicates self-belief. You are not adjusting yourself to be liked. You are inviting someone to meet you where you already stand. This creates polarity because you are grounded and centered rather than reactive. Men are drawn to women who feel emotionally anchored because it challenges them to show up with intention instead of testing limits. When standards are consistent, a man feels the impact of his behavior clearly. If he shows up, he feels closer. If he pulls away, he feels distance. This cause and effect teaches him how to stay connected without being told. It allows him to lead himself into deeper investment rather than being managed or corrected. Desire thrives on clarity, not chaos. Consistent standards remove the guesswork and replace it with a quiet challenge to rise. They create a dynamic where attraction is not sparked by drama but sustained by mutual respect, effort, and emotional alignment. Saying no calmly is more powerful than saying yes resentfully because calm refusal communicates self-authority, while resentful agreement communicates self-betrayal. When you say yes while internally resisting, it leaks through your tone, your energy, and your behavior. Even if your words sound agreeable, resentment builds silently and changes how you show up, making you colder, less present, and emotionally distant over time. This confuses the other person because they feel the shift but do not understand the cause. A calm no, on the other hand, is clean. It is honest and emotionally regulated. It does not attack, accuse, or explain excessively. It simply states a boundary and allows the moment to stand. This kind of no is powerful because it shows emotional maturity and inner stability. You are not trying to control the outcome or manage the other person's feelings. You trust yourself enough to let the response be what it is. When you consistently say yes out of fear of conflict, abandonment, or disapproval, you train people to ignore your limits. They learn that your comfort is flexible and your boundaries are negotiable. Over time, this erodes respect, not because they are bad people, but because human beings respond to the standards they are given. Calm refusal resets that dynamic. It teaches others how to treat you without force or drama. Men in particular respond strongly to calm boundaries because they register them as strength, not rejection. A resentful yes feels heavy and unattractive because it carries obligation and emotional debt. A calm no feels light and confident because it carries self-trust. Even if he feels disappointed, he also feels clarity, and clarity deepens respect. Calm no's also protect attraction because they prevent emotional build-up. When you honor your own limits, you stay warm, open, and authentic. You do not punish later with withdrawal, sarcasm, or emotional distance. This keeps the connection clean and grounded, rather than tense and unstable. This boundary shifts the power dynamic quietly. You stop negotiating your needs through emotional labor and start honoring them through behavior. You do not need to convince, justify, or prove anything. The calmness itself is the message. It says, I am comfortable with myself, and I do not trade my peace for approval, which is why this single habit changes how others feel around you and how they choose to show up around you. Boundaries filter unserious men and magnetize intentional ones because boundaries act as a truth serum in dating. They do not scare away the right people, they simply remove those who were never willing to show up fully. An unserious man is comfortable when access is easy, expectations are low, and accountability is absent. The moment a boundary appears, such as needing consistency, clarity, or respect, he feels restricted rather than inspired because his interest was never rooted in intention, it was rooted in convenience. When you hold boundaries, you stop auditioning for attention and start observing behavior. An unserious man reacts emotionally. He may push back, disappear, label you as difficult, or suddenly lose interest. This reaction is not caused by the boundary, it is revealed by it. The boundary exposes the gap between words and willingness, and that exposure saves you time, energy, and emotional confusion. An intentional man responds differently. He may not be perfect, but he is present. Boundaries do not make him feel controlled, they give him direction. He understands where you stand and what is required to stay connected. This clarity allows him to lean in rather than drift, because intention thrives in structure. He feels challenged in a healthy way, and that challenge activates effort, consistency, and growth. Many people fear boundaries because they confuse loss with failure. When someone leaves after a boundary, they assume the boundary pushed them away. In reality, the boundary prevented deeper attachment to someone who was never aligned. Filtering is not rejection, it is alignment in action. Each boundary clears emotional space, so the right dynamic can actually enter. Boundaries also change how men perceive your value, because value is felt through selectivity. When everyone has access, nothing feels special. When access is earned through presence and respect, it carries weight. An intentional man recognizes this instinctively. He does not feel tested, he feels chosen, and that feeling strengthens his desire to protect and invest. Without boundaries, you attract attention. Without boundaries, you attract confusion. With boundaries, you attract clarity, seriousness, and follow through. They turn dating from an emotional guessing game into a self-respecting process where the wrong people exit early and the right people finally have room to step forward. Over-explaining weakens boundaries because it shifts the focus from your self-respect to someone else's approval. When you feel the need to justify, rationalize, or defend a decision, you are signaling uncertainty and giving your power away. Boundaries are meant to communicate what you value and how you choose to engage. Over-explaining turns them into debates instead of statements of self-respect. Each added word dilutes the clarity of your position and allows the other person to negotiate or dismiss your needs. When you over-explain, even subtly, it creates loopholes. A man senses hesitation and reads it as an opportunity to push further. Instead of respecting your limits, he begins to test them, intentionally or not. The boundary becomes flexible in his perception, and with flexibility, attraction diminishes because desire thrives on challenge and clarity. Over-explanation often comes from fear, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, or fear that the person will walk away, but responding from fear weakens your presence and diminishes your perceived value. Silence, on the other hand, strengthens boundaries. When you set a limit and simply hold it without justification, your words carry weight because they are supported by your calm confidence. Silence conveys certainty. You are not debating, you are simply living by your standard. This unspoken strength creates respect, curiosity, and desire because the person must interpret your firmness instead of being told why they should agree. It also signals that your emotional world is self-contained. You are not dependent on validation to maintain it. Over-explaining can also confuse attraction with negotiation. Attraction grows when someone feels they must earn connection. Negotiation feels transactional and erodes the natural pull. By removing unnecessary words, you allow the boundary to speak for itself. Your energy communicates your priorities more effectively than any detailed justification could. Ultimately, holding boundaries without over-explaining demonstrates self-leadership. It shows that your needs are non-negotiable, that your presence is earned, and that connection is mutual. The clarity created by silence, firmness, and emotional calm draws the right men toward you, while naturally filtering out those unwilling to meet you on equal terms. This principle transforms attraction into intention, turning fleeting interest into consistent pursuit. The right man leans in when you hold your ground because true attraction is drawn to strength, not compliance. When you remain steady in your values, your standards, and your emotional boundaries, you communicate a sense of self-worth that cannot be negotiated. This is magnetic because it signals to a man that connection with you is intentional and meaningful, not something that can be taken for granted. A man who is emotionally capable recognizes that your calm firmness is not rejection, but a reflection of your self-respect. And that realization awakens his desire to step forward rather than drift away. Holding your ground does not mean being rigid or unkind. It means refusing to abandon your needs or compromise your standards for temporary comfort. When you do this, the man who is right for you experiences the clarity of your boundaries as a challenge in the healthiest sense, a challenge to show up fully, to invest authentically, and to rise to meet your energy instead of coasting. Men are instinctively wired to respond to consistency and presence. When you vacillate, when you overcompromise, or when you chase, attraction weakens because there is no framework for emotional effort. But when you hold your ground calmly, your energy communicates that he must choose to earn your attention, care, and presence, and that choice creates investment. The process also reveals character. An unserious or inattentive man may pull away or lose interest quickly because he is unwilling to meet you on equal terms. The right man leans in and steps up because he sees your value and wants to match it. Your steadiness gives him a blueprint for how to engage without manipulation or coercion. He doesn't feel tested or punished. He feels inspired to participate in something meaningful. By holding your ground, you create emotional gravity. Your presence becomes a point of stability and attraction, not a source of anxiety or confusion. Men are drawn not to desperation or emotional pliability, but to confidence and intentionality. In short, when you honor yourself consistently and without apology, the right man naturally moves closer, and the relationship dynamic shifts from uncertainty to deliberate pursuit. A boundary is not punishment. It is self-leadership because its purpose is never to control, manipulate, or make someone feel guilty. It exists to define your own space, values, and emotional integrity. Many people confuse boundaries with withdrawal or coldness, thinking that setting limits will push others away. In reality, a well-held boundary communicates clarity, strength, and intentionality. It shows that you are in charge of your emotional world, that your presence is earned through mutual respect, and that you refuse to sacrifice yourself for temporary approval. This kind of leadership is magnetic because it inspires respect and admiration rather than fear or resentment. Self-leadership through boundaries is about prioritizing your needs and maintaining consistency in how you respond to behavior. When someone crosses a line or shows inconsistency, you don't overreact, shame them, or beg for change. You calmly adjust your energy, pause your investment, or redirect your attention. This is not punitive, it is simply a natural consequence of valuing yourself. The effect is profound because it transforms the dynamic from one of reactive emotion to one of intentional interaction. People respond to the structure of your presence. The boundary itself communicates what is acceptable without needing explanation or argument. Boundaries also prevent self-abandonment. Without them, you may overextend, compromise your values, or tolerate behavior that diminishes your self-worth, all in the hope of preserving connection. This erodes attraction and creates imbalance in relationships. When boundaries are framed as self-leadership, every decision about your energy, attention, and emotional availability reinforces your integrity. It tells others that being with you is a privilege, not a given, and that the relationship requires effort, consistency, and care. Ultimately, a boundary as self-leadership transforms relationships. It filters out those who are unwilling or incapable of meeting you where you stand while magnetizing those who are intentional, emotionally mature, and aligned with your standards. This principle creates an environment where men don't feel controlled or punished. Instead, they feel invited to step into connection in a way that is meaningful, balanced, and mutually rewarding. Self-leadership ensures that desire and respect are not temporary but sustained, turning attraction into deliberate pursuit.